Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat, and with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that write grievousness which they have prescribed, to turn aside the needy from judgment, and to take away the right from the poor of my people, that widows may be their prey, and that they may rob the fatherless. And what will ye do in the day of visitation, and in the desolation which shall come from afar? To whom will you flee for help, and where will you leave your glory? Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio, and I just thank all of you for taking the time to join me this evening. It's good to be back. I want to give a shout out and thank the hijacker and also Mr. Rowe for covering for me last week. Not many of you know that I've been dealing with a bacterial infection for about 6 months' time, and it just about almost killed me. And it's had messed up my sleep for very long months and really depleted my energy. And so I'm glad to know what was going on. I did have a bladder stone, which I was unaware of, and it kept leading to infection after infection. But now that has been resolved. I had surgery last week, and so I'm able to, I believe, get back to a semblance of normality and to finally heal and be able to move on with my life and sleep well again. And so for that, I'm very grateful. And I thank all of you that took the time to share your prayers and to keep me in your thoughts. I'm very grateful and so honored to know and to have as support those of you that do join us, and especially in the weekly, the Targum study that we have on our Discord channel. And so just kind of a quick update, but hopefully things should be good from here on out. But I did want to tonight cover some things that I've been looking into with regard to the study of the Targum, but on not the 5 books of the Pentateuch, the Tanakh, the Torah that was given to Moses on Mount Sinai, but specific to the Targum translation of the books of Isaiah. And for those that don't know, the 66 chapters comprising the book of Isaiah are deeply prophetic, and they even match, as my friend Bill McGregor has discovered in premise and also published in a compilation, that each of the 66 chapters of the book of Isaiah fit in a larger pattern, the 66 books of the authorized King James Version of the Old and the New Testament, Apocrypha excluded. And so that is a very interesting premise, and he and I did an entire series of shows where we covered in great detail those very detailed and definitely not coincidental um, connections, and that in my mind, not only does the book of Isaiah as well as the King James confirm the inspired and divinely inspired nature of the biblical scriptures, but that both of those texts have encoded within them a pattern of bringing forth prophetically the end from the beginning and the beginning from the end, and that the Most High has shared and made known through these verses and the specifications of these patterns as to what would occur at the end of days, and also where it is that we have come from with regard to the war in heaven and also the enmity between the seed lines as it plays out. Because as I will show this evening and as I will discuss in greater detail, it is the harvest spoken about in Matthew chapter 13, the gathering of the wheat and the sheep and their separation from the goats and the tares that ends up being that distinction which determines the right of soul to go forth in eternity, whether to preservation or condemnation. And of course, I do pray that all of us are worthy of being numbered amongst the elect for what will be the upcoming millennial reign. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate that. And I do want to get, if you would, those that are in the chat, give me a shout out as to the sound quality and whether I'm coming through
with the Targum,
loud
it's
and
2,000
clear.
years
And
older than the King James, and it is
because
the
I
first
did get
translation of the
a
Hebrew
new
Torah
mic, and so I
into what
wanted
is
to
Aramaic. And
see how
Aramaic
this one
was the
does and
language
to
that the
make sure that
Israelites themselves
you're able to
used
hear
as
me
they
clearly. But
returned from the diaspora
and so
of
this evening I'm going
Nebuchadnezzar's.
to be reading from specifically chapters 10 through 14 in the first portion of the show. And then in the second portion of the show, I'll be reading chapters 30 through 35. And what is of interest and what is great, thank you, Viking, I appreciate that. And what is of great interest with regard to the things that I'm going to be bringing up and sharing with you. And I'm sure that also this evening will probably be the first time that many of you have ever heard the book of Isaiah rendered from the Aramaic Targum translation of the text, which predates our English version. And also, it will show to you just how much, even though, again, I know that the King James Version is inspired, and the way that we have the book of Isaiah even now, that it is accurate according to the rendering that was brought forth in the Tanakh. And that we have confirmation of this according to the Dead Sea Scrolls, because what we have now is also what is displayed in many of those texts, that the book of Isaiah was one of the predominant uh, books, that there were many versions, translations, and fragments discovered in the Qumran caves. However, my friend Stephen Ben-Nun of Israeli News Live, which I do have to give a shout out to him, because he was the one that asked me a question with regard to the texts that I'm going to be covering in the second portion of the show, chapters 30 through 35. Specific, he had asked me whether chapter 30, in my opinion, was, as we see in Matthew chapter 13, where Christ says that let both grow together until the time of the end, the wheat with the tares being the children of the wicked one, that if, in my opinion, we saw the unfolding of what would be the harvest gathering and preservation of the tares or these sheep, and the punishment, the condemnation of the wrath of God being poured out on the wicked and those not written into the books of life, as also seen in Matthew chapter 13. And so, absolutely, this is what is revealed through specifically the passages that I'm going to be reading from. But what is of interest and what I will be highlighting as we go through these verses is that the King James has scrubbed the mention of Yeshua in many of these verses. And the allusion to the word of the Lord, or the memra of the Lord, which is Christ, as being the sword and the catalyst by which the wrath is poured out on the wicked and those that are the kings and rulers, the wickedness in high places, the principalities and powers, that these forces will be brought to judgment by him in that time. And you'll see that as it is alluded to in Isaiah 14 and also Ezekiel chapter 28, that most people recognize that in those two specific chapters of the Bible, that you have mention of and detailed information brought forth about Lucifer, Satan the adversary, and his station before his banishment and exclusion from paradise to being exiled to this world. And in the text, it references him as being the Assyrian. And you also see that in chapter 31, Ezekiel chapter 31, you have greater detail as to his being the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the garden of God. And so this will be a fascinating study. And as I said, it will be one that has not been brought forth by anybody that I know of, when studying or looking for and mention the Targum Isaiah of Isaiah. It's difficult to find a full rendering, and you don't see mention or radio broadcasts or shows or anything done in connection to this particular topic. And so I know without a doubt that this is something that has not been covered and has not been spoken about uh, very much, if any, by anybody else. And also, I did have to scan from the Targum of Isaiah, which I do have in hardback form. I had to scan it into my computer and then seize the text from the images in order to prepare this study for you. So, and I do think it was, and it will be, and that it was worth it. And so now, excuse me, you will reap the benefits of what I will be alluding to. All right, I'm going to go to the beginning of chapter 10. And I will cover what I can this evening. Even if I don't get through it all, I'll cover what I can. And then if I have to do a part two, I will certainly do that because I think that the study will be of that interest, that much of interest, anyways. So, all right, from chapter 10, it says, and again, remember, now if you want to open up the King James and follow along, you'll be able to see, and I'm going to be stopping where we see mention of the Word of God, because there are numerous passages in the scroll of Isaiah, in these particular chapters, there's allusion to the Word of God, Christ as being, the elect one, the Holy One, that will be bringing forth the wrath of God in the end of days. But again, this knowledge has been expunged, and this is one of the reasons why um, the Israelites, the Hebrews, don't understand that Christ was Savior Messiah and that he was the fulfillment of all of the prophecies that had been preserved from ancient times, and that we are beneficent as far as being the inheritors of that legacy. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Woe unto them that sign oppressive decrees, and to those who write a grievous enactment, to turn aside the needy from judgment, and to rob whatever the poor of my people desire in judgment, that the widows may be their prey, and that they may rob the wealth of the orphans. What will ye do in that day, that your sins shall be visited upon you, when the tumult of oppression shall come from far? Whither will ye flee for help, and where will ye leave your glory? Therefore out of your land ye shall be fettered amongst the captives, and out of your cities ye shall be cast out slain. For all this they do not turn away from their sins, that his anger might turn away from them. But still they hold fast their rebellion, and yet his stroke will be to take vengeance on them. Woe to the Assyrian, the government of my fury! An angel is sent from before me against them for a curse. I will send him against an hypocritical assembly, and against the people that have transgressed my law. Will I give him a charge to take the spoil, and to take the prey, and to place him for a treading under foot like the mire of the streets? Howbeit he did not purpose so, neither doth his heart think so, but to destroy he hath said in his heart, and to make an end of nations without compassion. And so again, the Assyrian That is Satan, and that is the Antichrist. You'll those that read the extra biblical text, you will notice that the Antichrist is referenced as the Assyrian many times in the extra biblical manuscripts. For he saith, are not all my rulers altogether as kings considered before me? Is it not so, as Carchemish is subdued before me? Shall not Calno be so? Surely as Arphad is delivered into my hands, shall not Hamath be so? As I have done to Damascus, so will I do to Samaria. As my hand hath found the kingdoms which worship idols, although their images were more than those of Jerusalem, and their statues more than those of Samaria, shall I not, as I have done to Samaria and to her idols, so do to Jerusalem and to her idols? And it shall come to pass, which the Lord hath finished, to do all he hath said in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem. I will visit upon the works of the loftiness of the heart of the king of Assyria and the glory of his high looks. For he saith, by the strength of my hand I have done it, and by my wisdom, for I am prudent, and I have led nations into captivity from province to province, and the cities of their glory I have plundered, and I have brought down with strength those that dwell in fortified places. And my hand hath found as a nest the riches of the people, and as one gathereth eggs that are left, I have gathered all the inhabitants of the earth, and there was none that moved from thence and flew thither, that opened his mouth and spake a word. What is it possible that the axe should boast itself against him that heweth therewith, saying, behold, I have cut? Or shall the saw magnify itself against him that draweth it, saying, do I not draw? When a rod is lifted up to smite, it is not the rod that smites, but he that smites with it. Now, I want to also stop here for just a second because there's a couple other verses that I will be alluding to later that are specific to Lucifer and to also humanity as the family tree, that the two bloodlines, the tares and the wheat, they comprise the family tree of humanity, but that Lucifer's children, the tares, and then the wheat, the seed of promise, they together form in unity what is distinctly alluded to all throughout Scripture as being the two separate bloodlines. And so we'll be revisiting that because that also comes up in the text in great detail as well. Because the king of Assyria magnifies himself, therefore the Lord of the world, the Lord of hosts, shall send among his princes a blow, and beneath the vessels of their glory they are utterly burned up like the burning of a fire. And there shall be the Lord, the light of Israel, and his Holy One, his word strong as fire, and his word as a flame, and it shall slay and make an end of his rulers and of his governors in one day. And so let's see what that says in the King James. It's verse 17. And remember, you see in this verse, in the Targum version, the mention of the Word of Christ as the Holy One. In the King James, it says, "And the light of Israel shall be for a fire, and his Holy One for a flame, and it shall burn and devour his thorns and his briars in one day." I mean, you really, unless you are really paying close attention, you can't make out any allusion to Yahushua as the Word, as Yah's salvation, and that it would be He who brings forth the wrath of God at the end of days. And that, as it says in many other places, that punishes Satan by burning him with flame from inside out. And so, once again, let's read verse 17 from the Targum version. "And there shall be the Lord, the light of Israel, and his Holy One, his word strong as fire, and his word as a flame, and it shall slay and make an end of his rulers and of his governors in one day." And so we know that Christ, his word, he is the Holy One, the light of Israel. All right, continuing, verse 18. "And it shall consume the glory of the multitude of his army and their souls with their bodies, and he shall be broken and be a fugitive. And the rest of his warriors shall come to an end, that the people shall be a small number, and they shall be reckoned a weak kingdom. And it shall come to pass in that time that the remnant of Israel and such as are escaped of the house of Jacob shall no more again lean on the people with whom they served, but they shall lean upon the word of the Lord, the Holy One of Israel, in truth." That's verse 20, telling us that Israel in that day will lean upon the word and not their captives and the people that they serve. So this is what it says in the King James. "And it shall come to pass in that day that the remnant of Israel, and as such as are escaped of the house of Jacob, shall no more again stay upon him that smote them, but shall stay upon the Lord, the Holy One of Israel, in truth." And so, they're alluding and connecting it to the Father, which we know that, yes, the Israelites were believers and worshipers of Yahweh. But as it has been expunged, and as most people do not know, they knew of and trusted in the word of the Lord. They believed in Christ, and they knew him as Savior Messiah, even before he came into human mortal embodiment. And I will be showing very clearly this as truth in the work that I'm doing on the ancient prophecies of Christ. All right, continuing, because I know we have a lot to cover. "The remnant which have not sinned and have turned away from sin, the remnant of the house of Jacob, shall return to worship before the mighty God. Though thy people Israel be as the sand of the sea, a remnant which hath not sinned, but hath turned away from sin, for them mighty things shall be done, which shall prevail, even those which speak in righteousness. For a completion and an end, the Lord, the God of hosts, is making with all the wicked in the midst of the earth. Therefore, thus saith the Lord, the God of hosts, O my people that dwellest in Zion, be not afraid of the Assyrian. He shall smite thee with his government and his dominion. He shall lift up upon thee after the manner of Egypt. For yet a little while, and the curse shall cease from you of the house of Jacob, and mine anger shall be upon the people that work iniquity to destroy you. And the Lord of hosts shall bring upon him a stroke, as the stroke of Midian at the rock of Oreh, and his dominion shall depart from you, as the dominion of Pharaoh departed by the sea. And mighty works shall be done for you after the manner of Egypt. And it shall come to pass at that time that his dominion shall depart from you, and his yoke from off thy neck, and the nations shall be broken from before the Messiah. Let's see how they rendered that in verse 27. This is how it is in the King James. And it shall come to pass in that day that his burden shall be taken away from off thy shoulder, and his yoke from off thy neck, and the yoke shall be destroyed because of the anointing. Now, how does that in any way link to the Messiah bringing judgment upon them, and that it will be Christ who frees them? And what most people don't know is that it was Yahushua that also freed them from the bondage of Egypt, and that he was the one that brought death to the firstborn. He was the angel of the Lord that is mentioned in those passages. And so, again, so much has been changed purposely to hide that the Israelites worship Christ before, even as it says in the scriptures, before Abraham was, I am. I mean, this is confirmation of all that. Continuing. He is come to Iath. He hath passed through Migron. At Mimesh he shall appoint the princes of his army. They waited. They passed through the Jordan. At Geba they passed the night. The inhabitants of Ramah are broken. The men of Gibeon of Saul have fled. Lift up your voice, men of the daughter of Gallim. Give ear, ye who are dwelling in Laish, who are dwelling in poor Anathoth. The men of Madmah are broken. The inhabitants of Gibeon are fled. As yet the day is still high, and he has much time to come. Behold, Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, he journeyed and passed their stations, and he brought with him 40,000 seats of gold, in which the sons of the kings encircled with crowns were sitting. Likewise led with him 200,000 holding swords and spears. He also brought with him 260,000 archers, and 100,000 men ran before him. The length of his camp was 400 parasangs, the neck of his horses 40 parasangs. The number of his army was 260,000 myriads, lacking one. And thus they came upon Abraham when they had cast him into the midst of the burning fire. And thus they shall come with Gog and Magog, when the world shall have completed its end to be redeemed. When the first host passed through the Jordan, they drank up the waters which were in the Jordan. When the second host passed through the Jordan, the hoofs of the horses absorbed and drank the waters. When the third host passed through the Jordan, they dug wells and drank the waters. He came and stood in Nob, the city of the priests, before the wall of Jerusalem. He answered and said to his army, Is not this the city of Jerusalem against which I have tumultuously brought together all my camps, and on account of which I have oppressed all my provinces? Behold, she is smaller and weaker than all the fortified cities of the nations which I have subdued by the strength of my hand. He came up, he stood and shook his head. He stretched out and moved his hand against the mount of the house of the sanctuary, which is in Zion, and against the court, which is in Jerusalem. For those that don't know, Sennacherib, as king, was boasting about taking over and destroying Jerusalem. And in one single night, an angel of the Lord smited 189,000 of his soldiers and sent him away packing the very next day. That's in one night. They woke in the morning and their army was destroyed by the angel of the Lord. And you can guess who the angel of the Lord was. All right, continuing. Behold, the Lord of the world, the Lord of hosts, shall cast forth slaughter into his camp, as grapes that are trod in a winepress, and the high ones of stature shall be hewn down, and the mighty shall be humbled. And he shall slay the mighty men of his camp who are strong as iron, and those that make war upon the earth shall be cast down. And a king shall come forth from the sons of Jesse, and from his children's children the Messiah shall be anointed. Now this is an interesting verse too, because it tells us the sons of Jesse, which that Jesse was the father of David. And so it's telling us here in this verse, from his children's children, the Messiah shall be anointed. Let's see what it says in this verse. This is chapter 11, verse 2. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of fear of the Lord. Oh, I guess they missed the first verse because the second verse is what, but it's the first verse here in chapter 11. And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. No mention of the Messiah. All right, going back. And a king shall come forth from the sons of Jesse, and from his children's children the Messiah shall be anointed. And there shall dwell upon him the spirit of prophecy from before the Lord, the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord. He shall bring him to the fear of the Lord, and he shall not judge according to the sight of his eyes, neither reprove after his hearing of his ears, but with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove with faithfulness the needy of the earth. And he shall smite the sinners of the earth with the word of his mouth, and with the speech of his lips he shall slay Armelius the wicked. And the righteous shall be round about him, and the workers of faith shall draw nigh unto him. In the days of the Messiah of Israel, peace shall be multiplied in the earth. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall dwell with the kid, and the calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little suckling child shall be leading them. So, I mean, again, reading from the King James, we do not get that at all. That this whole chapter is about the reign of the Messiah and about how he would be the righteous one which judges the poor and the meek and that establishes righteousness in that day. It just says here, there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. But it's talking about the Messiah. And going down to, I think it's verse 6. In the days of the Messiah of Israel, peace shall be multiplied. in the earth. That's not what it says here. It says here in the King James, but with righteousness shall he judge the poor and reprove with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. I mean, everything about the Messiah is excluded. So, you know, again, this is just further reason as to why I recommend people study the Targum. Read the as close to original translation as you can, because so much is lost in translation. All right, continuing. And the cow and the bear shall feed together, their young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. And the suckling child shall play on the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put forth his hand on the sight of the pupil of the eyes of the cockatrice. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the fear of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. And there shall be at that time a son of the son of Jesse, who shall stand for an ensign of the people. Kings shall obey him, and the place of his dwelling shall be in glory. Which again, we know that the son of Jesse, David, and that from him comes the Messiah. And it shall come to pass at that time that the Lord shall add a second time his might to redeem the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria and from Egypt and from Patros and from India and from Elam and from Babylon and from Hamath and from the islands of the sea. And he shall lift up an ensign for the nations and shall assemble the scattered of Israel, and the captivity of Judah he shall gather together from the four winds of the earth. The envy of the house of Ephraim shall depart, and those that oppress the house of Judah shall come to an end. Those of the house of Ephraim shall not envy the house of Judah, and those of the house of Judah shall not oppress the house of Ephraim. Now we saw this in the recent Targum study that we did on the Judah and Manasseh when they came to buy corn from Joseph in Egypt, and Judah was showing his strength and that he would slaughter all of Egypt, and then Manasseh showed him his strength as well, and so that contention between these two people's groups is spoken about and was, the beginning of it, the inception of it was there in Egypt under when Judah and his brothers came to visit Joseph and they didn't recognize him as their brother. All right, continuing. They shall be united in one mind to smite the Philistines towards the west. They shall spoil the children of the east. Against Edom and Moab they shall stretch out their hands, and the children of Ammon shall obey them. And the Lord shall dry up the tongue of the Egyptian sea, and and shall lift the stroke of his strength upon Euphrates by the word of his prophets, and shall smite it in 7 streams, and men shall walk through it dry shod. Another thing that most people don't know is that the Most High, just as he split the seas, the Red Sea, and allowed Israel to cross on dry ground, so did he do to the river Euphrates. And in the scriptures, it says at the end of days that this miracle will be reenacted, and that the kings that come against Jerusalem will come on dry ground, as the river Euphrates will be dried up at that time. And there shall be a paved way for the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, like as it was to Israel in the day of their coming up from the land of Egypt. All right, chapter 12. And thou shalt say at that time, I will confess before thee, O Lord, for that I have sinned before thee. Thine anger is upon me, but when I return to the law, thine anger will turn from me, and thou wilt have mercy on me. Behold, in the word of God is my salvation. I am trusting and shall not be moved, because my strength and my praise is the fear of the Lord. He hath spoken by his word, and he is become my salvation. That's chapter 12, verse 2. Let's check that out in the King James. Verse 2 says, Behold, God is my salvation. Again, here it's alluding to Yahweh or Jehovah, to the Father, when it's actually speaking about the Word. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. For the Lord Jehovah is my strength and my song. He also has become my salvation. See, again, they changed it from being of the Son to being of the Father, which we know the Father and the Son are one. But, I mean, it's clear that it's a reference to Yah as the Word, Yahushua. I'll read it one more time. Behold, in the word of God is my salvation. I am trusting and shall not be moved, because my strength and my praise is the fear of the Lord. He hath spoken by his word, and he has become my salvation. And ye shall receive a new doctrine with joy from the chosen of the righteous. And at that time shall ye say, Praise before the Lord, pray in his name, decree his doings among the people. Remember ye that powerful is his name. Praise the Lord, for he has done mighty works. This is revealed in all the earth. Cry out and shout, O congregation of Zion, because he is great that promised to cause his Shekinah to dwell in the midst of thee, the Holy One of Israel. Chapter 13. The burden of the cup of cursing to give to Babylon to drink, which Isaiah the son of Amoz did prophesy. Against the fortified city that dwells securely lift up the ensign. Exalt the voice unto them, shake the hand, that they may go into the gates of the nobles. I have commanded those that are prepared by me. I have also called together my mighty ones, that they may avenge my wrath upon them, my strength and my praise. There is a voice of multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, the voice of the tumultuous assembly of kings of nations being assembled. The Lord of hosts is mustering the armies for battle. Now, another thing that is not clear in this particular passage, but when you read in the Brenton version of the Septuagint, it speaks about the giant army, the locust army being released at the end of days, and that those are the mighty ones that are to be released by the Most High God to bring forth and pour out the wrath of God on those not written into the books of life. So keep that in mind as we go through these verses. They are coming from a far country, from the ends of the earth, the Lord and the vessels of the cup of cursing before him, to destroy all the wicked of the earth. Howl ye, for nigh is the day, ready to come from before the Lord, like spoil from before the Almighty, it shall come. Therefore shall all hands be slackened, and every man's heart shall melt. They shall be struck with consternation, distress, and pangs shall take hold of them. They shall tremble as with the trembling of a woman that travaileth. They shall be amazed one at another. Their countenances shall be like flames of fire. Couple more minutes. Behold, the day from before the presence of the Lord cometh, cruel both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners out of it. For the stars of heaven and their constellations shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. And I will visit the inhabitants of the world with the punishment for evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. And I will put an end to the greatness of the wicked, and the strength of the mighty I will humble. And I will love them that fear me more than gold, in which the sons of men glory, and those that keep the law more than the fine gold of Ophir. Therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place from before the presence of the Lord of hosts, and in the day of the fierceness of his anger. And he shall be as a roe chased, and as a sheep when there is none to gather them together. They shall every man turn to his own people, and flee every one into his own land. Every one that shall be found in her shall be slain, and every one that shall enter into the fortified cities shall be slain by the sword. And their children shall be dashed before their eyes, their houses shall be plundered, and their wives ravished. Behold, I am bringing upon them the Medes, who are not impelled by silver, and as for gold, they delight not in it. And their bows shall strike through the young men, and they shall not compassionate the child of the womb. Their eyes shall not spare the children. And Babylon shall become, she that was aforetime the joy of kings, the beauty of the Chaldeans, excellency, as the overthrow wherewith the Lord overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It shall not be inhabited forever, nor shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arabian pitch his tent there, neither shall the shepherds dwell there. So, this again is the wrath of God being poured out on the wicked, those not written into the books of life. When we return, I'll finish with a couple more verses. Then we'll go into chapter 14 and finally into the end time, the illusion found in chapters 30 through 35. We'll be right back for a second hour.
Listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
All right, welcome back, everybody. And I'm glad that you are enjoying this particular reading. And as I said, we're only going to be stopping on those verses which are specific to Yeshua. And I'm also hoping that Stephen Ben Noon will cover this and listen to it, and then perhaps we can do a show about it. He will be joining me. He and Yana will be joining us, Laurel and I, soon to talk about the Noahide laws, which are a fascinating topic in and of itself. But all right, continuing the last two verses of chapter 13. And remember, chapter 13 is about the wrath of God being poured out on the wicked and those not written into the books of life. And in my opinion, the rapture or the catching away, the preservation of the wheat happens right before this particular event where the wrath of God and the locust army and the giants are loosed from the north. And as I said, do read the Brenton translation of the Septuagint, and you'll know that this chapter is specific about the locust army. Joel chapter 2. And in the Cave of Treasures, there's a portion about the giants being released from the north. I share that in great detail in my book, Paradise, the Sides of the North, and the Mount of the Congregation. All right, last two verses, it says this. But the martins shall lodge there, and their houses shall be filled with owls, and there shall the ostriches dwell, and devils shall delight themselves there. It's interesting that you'll see that there's allusion to the devils and dragons in many of these verses, and they'll have translated that in the King James as jackals or coyotes or something of that nature. And so it takes away that whole supernatural context of, you know, the dragons being the serpent seed, and um, the powers, the principalities, that lead that particular bloodline. In this verse, the wildcats shall shriek in their palaces, and dragons in the place of the abodes of their luxuries. And nigh to come is the time of the destruction of Babylon, and her days shall not be prolonged. So in the King James, the word devils and also the word dragons are excluded from those two verses. All right, now we go into chapter 14. For the Lord will have compassion upon the house of Jacob, and will delight again in Israel, and shall make them to dwell in their land. And proselytes shall be joined unto them, and they shall be united unto the house of Jacob. And the nations shall take them, and shall bring them to their land, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Shekinah of the Lord for servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captives, whose captives they were. Those who had made them their servants shall now serve them. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy distress, from thy bondage, and from the hard servitude which was served upon thee. That thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, how hath the dominion that made us servile ceased? How is come to an end the strength of the sinner? The Lord hath broken the strength of the wicked, the government of sinners, of him who was smiting the people in fury with a perpetual stroke, of him who was ruling the nations in anger, ruling and none hindered. The whole earth is at rest, is quiet, they rejoice with a song. Rulers also rejoiced over thee, the rich in treasuries said, since thou art laid down, the destroyer is not come up upon us. Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. She roused for thee the mighty, all the rich in treasures, all the kings of the nations rise from their thrones. All of them shall answer and say unto thee, art thou become sick as we? Unto us thou hast become like. Thy glory is brought down to the grave. The rattlings, noise of the songs of the musical instruments. The worm is spread under thee, and upon the vermin. How art thou cast down from on high, who was shining among the sons of men, as the star Venus among the stars? Thou art dashed down to the earth, who wast a slaughterer among the nations. And thou hast said in thy heart, I will climb up the heavens. I will place the throne of my kingdom above the people of God. I will sit upon the mountain of the solemn assembly, upon the ends of the north. I will ascend over all people. I will be higher than all of them. But to the grave thou shalt be brought down, to the ends of the pit, of the place of perdition. Those that see thee shall look attentively at thee. They shall consider thee and say, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that laid waste kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness, that laid waste its cities, and did not open the gate to his prisoners? All the kings of the nations, all of them lie down in glory, each in his eternal abode. But thou art cast out of thy grave as a hidden branch, as those hidden among the slain, as those pierced by the sword, as those that are descending the lowest pit of the place of destruction, as a carcass trodden under feet. Now, it's interesting in this particular verse that the allusion to Lucifer is they call him an abominable branch. Here he is called a hidden branch. And the reason being the hidden branch or the abominable branch is because as as with Christ and that his connection to the end of days, the harvest, the judgment that is coming, as that has been hidden, so has the fact that Lucifer has his own bloodline, his own progeny here upon the earth, and that the tares are the children of the wicked one, and that Cain was of that wicked one, and that they are the children of perdition, the sons of Belial, the forces of darkness aligned against us. And so, in this verse, the next few passages it will go into, just as Christ said, let both grow together, and at the time of the end, I will send my angels forth as reapers to gather the wheat for preservation and the tares for burning. So does Yahweh in these passages coming up say, prepare slaughter for his children that they inherit not the cities. And so, again, we see revealed in the scriptures that the devil has his own progeny and that they are counted as the seed of the evildoers. And that's why we see in John chapter 5, I think I already closed it, but I'll read it in just a short bit. But in John chapter 5, we have mention of the two different bloodlines as well, and as it plays out. All right, continuing. Thou shalt not be like one of them in burial, because thou hast destroyed thy country, thou hast slain thy people. The seed of evildoers shall not be established forever. Prepare ye slaughter for his children, for the iniquity of their fathers, lest they rise and possess the earth, and the faces of the world be filled with enemies. And I will reveal myself to take vengeance of them, saith the Lord of hosts. And I will destroy of Babylon the name and the remnant and the son and the son's son, saith the Lord of hosts. And I will make it an inheritance for the hedgehog, a place of desolation, pools of water. And I will sweep her as they are sweeping with a besom. And I will throw her down to destroy her, saith the Lord of hosts. The Lord of hosts hath sworn, saying, surely, as I have thought, so shall it be, and as I have purposed, so shall it stand, to break the Assyrian in my land, and upon the mountains of my people I will tread him under foot. Then there shall depart from them his dominion, and his yoke from off their necks shall cease. This is the purpose that is purposed upon all the inhabitants of the earth, and this is the might of the ruler which is lifted up over all the kingdoms. For the Lord of hosts has purposed, and who can remove it? Yea, his power is exalted, and who can withstand it? All right, I'm going to stop here and go ahead and skip down and get into the chapter 30 through 35. Because as I said, it is the judgment against these two bloodlines. It is the harvest. What we see mentioned in Matthew 13, where Christ says, "Let both grow together until the time of the end." This is speaking about the time of the end, and it will reveal what those days will be like and how the end times will unfold. But you'll notice again, as we covered in verses 10 through 12, there are so many mentions of the word of the Lord, of Yahushua Christ as being an integral part and the most integral part of that judgment being brought by the Father as the Word, as the Son. He is the sword, and it's his breath, his voice that destroys all those that are aligned against him. So I'm going to try to cover as much as I can. Chapter 30, verse 1. Woe unto the rebellious children, saith the Lord, who take counsel, but not of my word, who consult a consultation, but do not ask my prophets, that they may add sin unto the sins of their soul, who go to descend into Egypt, but ask not the words of my prophets, to strengthen themselves with the strength of Pharaoh, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Therefore the strength of Pharaoh shall be unto you for confusion, and confidence in the shadow of Egypt for disgrace. For their princes were in Tanis, and their messengers have reached Taphnes. All of them go unto a people to be confounded, a people that shall not profit them, who shall be of no help, and of no profit, but a confusion and reproaches. They carry upon their beasts a burden on the way southward into a land of oppression and distress, a place of the lion, and he whelps of the lionesses and serpents, and of the flying basilisks. Yes, that is the feathered serpents for those that don't recognize. Thought that was interesting as well. That Egypt is referenced as the land of the flying basilisk, just as America, is also alluded to as the land of the flying serpents. All right, continue. They carry upon their shoulders their young cattle, their treasures, and they bring upon the burden the bunches of camels, whatever is in their treasuries, unto a people that shall not profit them. And as for the Egyptians, their help is vanity and emptiness. Therefore, I shall meet many of them slain. I will bring armed men upon them. Now go, write it amongst them upon a tablet, and mark it upon lines of a book, that it may be for a witness before me in the day of judgment forever. That this is a rebellious people, lying children, children that will not receive the instruction of the law of the Lord, who say to the prophet, Prophesy ye not, and as for doctrines, teach us not the doctrine of the law. Speak ye with us with signs, relate unto us various things. Turn us from the right paths, make us to cease from tradition, put a distance from us the word of the Holy One of Israel. Let's take a look at that really quick. Chapter 30, verse 11. All right, here we go. Get you out of the way, turn aside out of the paths, cause the Holy One of Israel to cease from before us. So again, you see there that, the word of the Lord, the Holy One of Israel, it's excluded from the text. Verse 12. Wherefore thus saith the Holy One of Israel, because ye have despised this word, and trust in lie and oppression, and stay thereon, therefore this sin shall be unto you as a city laid waste. All right, finding my place. And made a ruinous heap, as a bending wall whose breaking cometh very suddenly. and its breaking shall be the breaking of a potter's vessel of clay, who is breaking it without compassion. And among its fragments there shall be found a not be found a potsherd to take fire from the earth, or to draw water from the cistern. For thus saith the Lord God, the Holy One of Israel, I have said, if ye return to my law, ye shall have rest, and ye shall be redeemed. Ye shall be quiet, and ye shall dwell in safety, and be of the law. Oh, and be mighty, but ye would not. And ye said, Nay, but we will on horses, therefore shall ye flee, and we will ride upon the swift. Therefore shall they be swift that pursue you. 1,000 of you shall flee because of the rebuke of one, because of the rebuke of five, till ye let as a signal fire on the top of a mountain, and as a beacon on a high hill. And therefore the Lord will ye show your pity, and he that is mightily will compassionate you. For the Lord is the God who doeth judgment. Blessed are the righteous who wait for his salvation. Again, that is Christ. Salvation is through Christ. For the people of Zion shall dwell in Jerusalem, thou shalt weep no more. He will assuredly show thee compassion, the voice of thy prayer. He will hear, and he will answer thy supplication. And the Lord shall give unto you the treasures of the enemy, and the spoil of the oppressor. And he will no more take away his Shekinah from the house of the sanctuary. And thine eyes shall behold my Shekinah in the house of the sanctuary. And thine ears shall hear a word behind thee, saying, This is the right way, walk ye in it. Turn ye not from it to the right or to the left. And ye shall defile the covering of your idols of silver, and the ornament of thy molten images of gold. Ye shall abominate it, as they abominate the impurity of a menstruous woman. Thus ye shall abominate it. Then shall he give rain for thy seed, with which thou shalt sow the ground, and corn, and the fruit shall increase in the land, and there shall be sustenance and goodness. And at that time the just shall be nourished from their cattle, with the marrow of the tender and the fat ones. And the oxen and the asses with which they plow the ground shall eat fat meslin, which has been winnowed with the shovel and with the rain. And there shall be upon every high mountain and upon every high and lofty hill rivers flowing with water at the time of the ruin of the kings of their armies, in the day of the great slaughter, at the falling of the princes. Moreover, the light of the moon shall be as the light of the sun, and as the light of the sun shall in future shine 343 times more brightly. The light is 7 days, and the days that the Lord shall turn the captivity of his people and heal the sickness caused by his blow. Behold, the name of the Lord shall be revealed, as the prophets of old have prophesied concerning him. His wrath is mighty and too heavy to bear. His curse shall go forth from before him upon the wicked, and his word is a consuming fire. And his word is as an overwhelming river, reaching unto the neck. He shall slay the mighty. He will assuredly agitate the nations with the agitation of vanity. And there shall be a bridle of erring, the jaws of the people. Ye shall have a song as in the night when the festival is sanctified with joy of heart, as when the march of thanksgiving and the pipe to enter the holy mountain of the Lord, to appear before the mighty one of Israel. One other thing I want to make mention of is that at the end of days, it also makes mention that during the reign of the Antichrist for the last 3.5 years, that no water, that no rain comes from the skies, that the clouds are dried up for 3.5 years, and that no water can be found. It becomes such a rare commodity that people will murder, kill just to get a drink of fresh water. All right, continue. And the Lord shall proclaim the brightness of the voice of his word, and he shall reveal the strength of his arm in the fury of his anger and in flames of fire, the destroying, the graven images scattering, and storm and hailstones. For through the voice of the word of the Lord, the Assyrian shall be broken, he that smote by his power. And it shall come to pass that the Lord shall cause to rest the vengeance of his might in every pass of their princes and mighty ones, even amongst them. The house of Israel shall praise with the tabrets and harps, because of the mighty war which shall be waged for them against the people. For hell is made ready from eternity on account of their sins. Yea, the eternal King hath prepared it deep and wide. A fiery pyre as of abundance of fuel burns it. The word of the Lord, like an overwhelming torrent of brimstone, shall kindle it. All right, I want to check that really quickly. 31. It says, For through the voice of the Lord shall the Assyrian be beaten down, which smote with a rod. And so, again, they take out the word of the Lord, which is allusion to Christ. Even in the next verse 32. And in every place where the grounded staff shall pass, which the word of the Lord is supposed to be, shall lay upon him, it shall be with tabrets and harps, and in battles of shaking will he fight with it. So it's, speaking about the word of the Lord, but then again, you have that removed. All right, back to the Targum. Woe to them that go down to Egypt for help, who stay themselves upon horses and trust in chariots because they are many, and in horsemen because they are very strong. But they stay not themselves upon the word of the Holy One of Israel, neither seek instruction from the Lord. And also he in his wisdom will bring evil on account of what he is doing, and he will not make to fail his words, but he will arise against the house of evildoers and against those who help the work of a lie. And the Egyptians are men, and none of them a mighty one. And their horses are flesh and not spirit, and the Lord shall deal a stroke of his power, and he that helpeth shall stumble. And he it is holpen shall fall, and all together shall be destroyed. For thus the Lord has said unto me, like as the lion and the lion's whelp roar over their prey, when a multitude of shepherds are come together, he will not be afraid of their voice, neither be terrified at their tumult. Thus all the kingdom of the Lord of the hosts be revealed, encamping upon the mountain of Zion and upon its hill. As a bird by flying, so the power of the Lord of hosts shall be revealed. He shall protect, he shall deliver, he shall save, and he shall make to pass away. Return to the law, for you have multiplied sin, O sons of Israel. At that time, each man shall abhor the idols of their silver and the idols of their gold, which your hands have made for you for a god. Then shall the Assyrian fall by a sword not of man, and the sword not of man shall destroy him, and he shall betake himself to flight, as from before those who slay with the sword, and his heroes shall be for destruction, and his princes shall flee. This is the battle of Armageddon, if you didn't put it together, where, the Assyrian, the Antichrist, gathers all the armies and all the nations of the world to fight against Christ, and they are all destroyed by him. They shall move away, and his princes shall be broken on account of the miracle, saith the Lord, whose splendor is in Zion to them who obey the law, and whose burning fury of fire is in Jerusalem for them who transgress his word. I, or behold, a king shall reign in truth, and the righteous shall be magnified to execute just vengeance on the people, and the just that were hidden because of the wicked, as those who hide themselves on account of a storm, shall return. This is the 10,000s of his saints coming with uh, the Lord of hosts in the clouds, and shall be magnified, and their instruction shall be received quickly, like the waters that flow into a dry land, like the shadow of a great rock in a parched land. And the eyes of the righteous shall not be shut, and the ears of those who receive instruction shall hear. Even the heart of the rash shall understand knowledge, and the tongue of those that was tied shall be ready to speak plainly. And the wicked man shall no more be called just, and he that transgresses against his word shall not be called mighty. Let's go to that verse 32:5. It says here in the King James, the vile person shall be no more called liberal, nor the churl said to be bountiful. Again, the everything about the word of the Lord is excluded from the text. For the wicked will talk wickedness, and in their heart they meditate violence, to practice falsehood, and to speak revolt against the Lord, to weary the soul of the righteous, who long after instruction, as the hungry after bread, and after the words of the law, which are like water to him that are athirst. They purpose to make decease, and the wicked whose works are evil take counsel with sinners, to destroy the poor with lying words, and the words of the needy in judgment. But the righteous counsel truth, and in their truth they shall be established. Ye provinces that dwell at ease, arise, hear my voice. Ye cities that dwell in safety, listen to my word. To those who dwell at ease shall be agitated for days and years, because the corn is come to an end, and there is no fruit to gather. They that dwell at ease shall be broken. They that dwell in safety shall tremble. Strip ye and make you bare, and gird sackcloth upon your loins. They beat the breast for the pleasant fields, for the fruit laden vines. Upon the land of my people thorns and thistles shall come up, yea, in all the houses of joy, in the fortified city. For the house of the sanctuary shall be laid waste, the noisy city shall be desolate, in which they worship. The house of our strength and hiding place shall be searched out, dug up, desolate, and waste unto a time. The place which was a house of joy and gladness for kings is now become a spoil for armies. All these things shall come us until refreshing shall come to us from the face of him whose Shekinah is in the highest heavens. The wilderness shall become a fruitful field, and the fruitful shall be inhabited by many cities. Then they that do justice shall dwell in the wilderness, and those that do righteousness shall inhabit the fruitful field. And they that do righteousness shall be at peace, and those that adorn righteousness shall be in quietness, and they shall be in safety forever. And my people shall dwell in their habitations in peace, and in their land in safety, and in their cities at ease. And hail shall descend and shall slay the armies of the nations, and their encampments shall be laid desolate and come to an end. Blessed are ye, O just, ye work out for yourselves good works, because ye are like those who sow by watered places, sending the oxen to tread out the corn, and asses to gather it. Chapter 33. But I want to make a comment here that in Joshua chapter 10, you read that when God allowed Joshua to cause the sun and the moon to stand still and to prolong the day so that he could slaughter the giants, the children of Anak, the mighty Amorites, that God destroyed more by hailstones than they did by sword. And it will be the same at the end of days, that God will do a mighty act and that he will cause the destruction of the haughty, and that it will be his judgment and the word that brings punishment against the Assyrian and the powers and the principalities aligned against him. Woe to him who is coming to spoil thee, and shall they not spoil thee? And woe to him that is coming to plunder, and shall they not plunder thee? When thou shalt come to spoil, they shall spoil thee, and when thou shalt be weary of plundering, they shall plunder thee. O Lord, be merciful unto us. We have hoped for thy word. Be thou our strength every day, our salvation also in the time of distress. 33:20 there. Let's take a look at that. Blessed are ye that sow beside all waters, that send forth thither the feet of the ox and the ass. Oh, sorry, this is it. Look upon Zion, the city of our solemnities. Thine eyes shall see Jerusalem, a quiet habitation, a tabernacle that shall not be taken down. Not one of the stakes thereof shall ever be removed, neither shall any of the cords thereof be broken. All right, going back to the Targum. And it shall come to pass, whatever good thou hast promised to them that fear thee, thou wilt bring and establish it in its time. This is speaking about the millennial reign here. Strength and salvation, wisdom and knowledge. For them that fear the Lord, the treasure of his goodness is prepared. When thou shalt reveal thyself to them, the messengers of the nations shall cry bitterly in the street. Those who had gone forth to proclaim peace shall return to weep in the bitterness of soul. The highways lie desolate. The wayfaring man ceaseth because they have forgotten the covenant. They shall be removed far from their cities. They have not considered the sons of men. Evil shall come upon them. The land mourneth, it is laid desolate. Lebanon is withered, it shakes off its leaves. Sharon has become like a desert. Bashan is laid desolate, and Carmel. Now I will reveal myself, saith the Lord. Now will I lift myself up on high. Now will I be exalted. Ye, O people, have purposed for yourselves purposes of iniquity. You have worked for yourselves evil works, because your works are evil. My word shall consume you, as a whirlwind consumes chaff, and the people shall be as the burning of fire, as thorns are cut up and burnt in the fire. Hear ye, O righteous that keep the law from of old, what I have done, and know ye, sinners that have returned to my law, that my strength is nigh. The sinners in Zion are afraid, terror hath seized the wicked, who when they were committing theft in their ways said, who of us shall dwell in Zion, in which the brightness of his Shekinah is like the devouring fire? Who of us shall sojourn in Jerusalem, where the wicked shall be judged to be delivered into hell, into everlasting burning? The prophet said, they shall live in it, every one who walketh in righteousness, and speaketh honest things, removing himself to a distance from the mammon of iniquity, removing himself from oppression, that restraineth his hands from holding a bribe, that stoppeth his ears from hearing of the shedding of the innocent blood, and shutteth his eyes from looking at the workers of iniquity. The house of his habitation shall be in a high and exalted place. In the house of the sanctuary shall his soul be satisfied. His food shall be sufficient. His waters shall continue. like a fountain of water whose waters fail not. Thine eyes shall see the Shekinah of the King of the worlds in his beauty. Thou shalt behold and see those that descend down to hell. Thy heart shall meditate great things. Where are the scribes? Where are the rulers? Where are the mathematicians? Let them come if they are able to count number of the slain of the chief of the camp of the mighty. Thou shalt not be able to see government of a mighty people, whose language is so unintelligible that thou canst not understand it, whose tongue stammereth because there is no understanding in them. O Zion, thou shalt see their fall. O city of our festivals, thine eyes shall see the consolation of Jerusalem in her prosperity and security, like a tabernacle that is not taken down, and whose pegs not drawn out forever, and whose cords shall not be broken. Again, this is New Jerusalem. Yea, surely from thence the power of the Lord shall be revealed, to do good unto us from the place whence overflowing rivers of broad span shall flow, through which shall not pass the fisherman's boat, nor the large pinnacle go through it. For the Lord is our judge, who by his power brought us out of Egypt. The Lord, who is our teacher, who gave us the doctrine of the law from Sinai. The Lord is our King. He will redeem us and execute for us vengeance of judgment on the host of Gog. At that time the people shall be bereft of their strength, shall be like a ship whose ropes are broken. Neither shall there be strength in their mast, which is cut down, so that it is not possible to spread a sail upon it. Then shall the house of Israel divide the treasures of the people, the abundance of spoil and prey, and although the blind and the lame are left among them, they shall also divide the abundance of spoil and prey. Henceforth they shall not say to the people which dwell round about them, I shall return to the Shekinah. From you is come upon us the evil plague. The people, the house of Israel, shall gather together, and they shall return to their land, their sins being forgiven. Chapter 34. Come near, ye nations, to hear, and hearken, ye kingdoms. Let the earth hear, and the world's fullness, and all that dwell in her. For the wrath from before the presence of the Lord is upon all nations, and slaughter upon all their hosts. He hath condemned in and delivered them over to the slaughter. And their slain shall be cast out, and their stink shall ascend from their carcasses, and the mountains shall be melted with their blood. And all the pleasant hosts of heaven shall be dissolved, and they shall be blotted out from beneath the heavens, as it is said concerning them in this book. And all their armies shall come to an end, as the fading leaf, this book, and at their, oh, sorry, and all their armies shall come to an end, as the fading leaf from vine, and as the withering fig from the fig tree. Because my sword is revealed in heaven. Behold, it shall be uncovered upon Edom and upon the people which I have condemned to judgment. The sword before the presence of the Lord is filled with blood. It is fattened. It is fattened with the blood of kings and rulers. It is fattened with the kidneys of princes, because there is a slaughter before the Lord in Bozrah, and a great sacrifice in the land of Edom. And the mighty men shall be slain with them, and the rulers and the princes, and their land shall be drunken with their own blood, and their dust made fat with their own fat. For it is the day of vengeance before the presence of the Lord, the year of recompense to take vengeance, of judgment on account of the ignominy of Zion. And the rivers of Samaria be turned into pitch, and her dust into brimstone, and the land shall become burning pitch. This is, in my opinion, at the end of days. I've told you how the wrath of God being poured out on the wicked, that there will be a new heaven and a new earth, and that the earth will be destroyed, the stars come crashing down, and everything is set ablaze. This is that by night and by day it shall not be extinguished, her smoke shall ascend forever. From generation to generation she shall lie waste. None shall pass through her to everlasting ages. The pelican and the porcupine shall inherit her, and the owls and the ravens shall dwell in her. And the line of devastation shall be extended over her, and plummet of desolation. They said, we are the sons of free men, and they were not willing to accept over them a kingly government. And all her princes shall come to nothing. And in her places shall spring up thorns and nettles, and brambles in their fortified cities. And she shall become a habitation for dragons, a place for the daughter of the ostrich. And there shall meet one another martens and wildcats and demons. Each shall sport with its companion. Verily, dryads shall dwell there, and they shall find rest for themselves. And the hedgehog shall make its nest there, and shall breed there. Partridges shall chirp in the shady boughs. Surely the vultures shall be gathered thither, every one with her mate. Search ye out of the book of the Lord, and seek. No one shall fail, none shall tarry. For their mate, for by his word they shall be gathered together, and by his pleasure they shall be brought together. And he, by his word, hath cast the lot for them, and by his will, he hath divided it unto them. By line, they shall possess it forever, and from generation to generation, they shall dwell therein. Let's take a look at that too. It's the last in chapter 34. Seek ye out of the book of the Lord and read. No one of these shall fail, none shall want her mate. For my mouth it hath commanded, and his spirit it hath gathered them. And he hath cast a lot for them, and his hand hath divided it unto them. By line they shall possess it forever, from generation to generation shall they dwell therein. Again, everything about the word of the Lord removed. So again, for by his word they shall be gathered together, and by his pleasure they shall be brought together. And he by his word hath cast a lot for them. All right, skipping down to 35. I want to try to get through this real quick. They that dwell in the wilderness, in the thirsty land, shall rejoice, and those that inhabit the desert shall rejoice, and shall shine as the lilies. They shall greatly rejoice, be glad, yea, with joy and gladness. The glory of Lebanon shall be given unto them, the splendor of Carmel and of Sharon, the house of Israel, to whom these things promised. They shall see glory of the Lord, the beauty of our God. The prophet said, strengthen ye the weak hands, and confirm ye the feeble knees. Say ye to the fearful of heart, that they may keep the law. Be ye strong, and fear ye not. Behold, your God shall be revealed, to take vengeance of judgment. The Lord of retributions, the Lord shall be revealed, and he shall save you. Then the eyes of Israel shall open, which were blind to the law, and their ears, which were as of the deaf, shall hear and receive the words of the prophets. Then, when they shall see the captives of Israel gathered to go to their own land, as the swift harts, and not tarry, they shall sing with their tongue, which has been tied, because then the waters shall gush forth in the wilderness. Remember, this is, when New Jerusalem comes and the waters are returned, because for the last 3.5 years there was no water, no rain, and this land was brazen, which has been tied, because then the waters shall gush forth in the wilderness, and rivers in the plain. Then the mirage shall become pools of water, and the thirsty places springs of water. In the place where the dragons dwell, reeds and rushes shall come up, and a trodden way shall be there, and a straight one, and it shall be called the way of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it, and the wayfaring men shall not cease. The ignorant shall not err. There shall not be there a king doing evil, and an oppressive governor shall not pass over it. Yea, they shall not be found here, but the redeemed shall walk there. And the redeemed of the Lord shall return, because they shall be gathered from the midst of their captivity, and they shall come to Zion with a song, and they shall have everlasting joy which shall not cease, and a cloud of glory shall overshadow their heads. Joy and gladness shall found, and sorrow and sighing shall cease from them, namely from the house of Israel. Wow, we made it. That was great. Perfect timing. And so you can see how these verses are all about the end of days, the battle of Armageddon, and what is the harvest, the destruction of the tares, the children of the wicked one, and the gathering, the regathering of the house of Jacob, the house of Israel, and in preparation for what will be the millennial reign, and they will be allowed to enter therein. And then the former things will have passed away, that God will establish paradise and abundance and beauty and harmony and joy. And there will be no more evil. There will be no more strife, no more contention, no more evil wickedness, no more government, no more kings to oppress and to rule in impunity. And it will be a government established by the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, a just God who rules in compassion and rules in love. And wow, what a great day that will be. I so pray and look forward to it coming and quickly and shortly. And we also see that in these passages, in these verses, that it speaks about how there will be all this abundance, and even all this peace and all this safety, and then comes sudden destruction. And the locust army, the supernatural forces, they are all gathered by the Antichrist and the powers and the rulers of darkness uh, to take over Israel and to contest against Christ and the 10,000s of his saints that come with him. And so, very interesting study. And I know I went through it kind of quickly, but I do recommend that people check it out and look at it side by side. There is a version of the Targum that I have a copy of that places um, the Jewish scriptures, and it's slightly different than the King James, but it places it side by side with what is the Targum version of Isaiah. I would also remind people that in that verse in chapter 45, where everybody speaks about how God, um, in the passage in the King James, it says that God created evil, that He created evil and He created good. That in the Targum version, it says that He created good and punishment for evil, which, leaving that portion out, what a huge difference that makes. Because God does not create evil. He gave free will to man and to the angels, and we, falling away and, um, allowing ourselves to be tempted into darkness, we're the ones that have created evil and that have perpetuated the chaos that we see in this world. God created everything in perfection and harmony, and it was the separation of light and darkness, the division of the forces of good and evil, which actually led to the earth becoming without form and void, or becoming a deserted wasteland and an indistinguishable ruin. And so, the earth has been destroyed before, um, and you can read and study that in my work. And I thank all of you for joining me. I hope that this lesson blessed you, and join me tomorrow night. We'll be going into some other things that also the distinction, the differences between the Targum and the ancient sources with regard to the modern English translations. God bless all. Good night.
Listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.